we're going to get some more interesting questions today. And shall we begin?
Yalla.
Here you go. My fist comes to you. Ah!
You gotta go the other way.
There you go. That, you go
There
like
we
this.
go.
There you
Why is
go.
mine whiter than yours, but then the digital form looks yellow?
I know because that's how Judaism invites all the Gentile people into that.
Ah, good
There's
answer.
there's no color, nothing. So see how it
It's just
meant.
skin deep. White on the outside, chocolate on the inside.
Oh my God! All right, Rabbi. There is
You're
a
vanilla,
one.
it looks like.
Yes, sir. So let's go and see this one. See in Hinduism, I think last time I told you or not. Hinduism is mainly, I think, I would always refer to you all the time because it has got a lot of things which is related to even Judaism, like mystic, Kabbalah, everything inside the Hinduism. And in Hinduism, there are four books, like four main core books: Yajur, Rik, Ajur, Othervana, and Sama. These are the biblical books. It's like the Torah for them. There are a lot of metaphors in those things relating to that. So, why I am telling all these things to you, even though you are a Jewish rabbi, why should you know all these things? But I want to ask you a question. So, is Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and the
Don't do it.
snake are
Don't do
all.
it.
No, no, no. I'm asking you, are these metaphorically explained or really happens? How we are going to correlate this?
I love this. I love this topic. But you're treading on what's the word? You're treading on shaky ground here. We could we could offend a lot of people.
Oh no!
So
Oh, okay.
so
I
how
don't.
dare you ask this very important question? All right, let's
Oh
do
my
it.
god.
It's an important question. It shouldn't be brushed under the rug.
Sure. Yes.
Um, and I think it's very important because you see a lot of ostracism of different groups within the Judeo-Christian world, let's say, based on this particular question or closely related topics. So I'm going to approach this uh, before answering you directly. I'm going to first state that I want to ask you a question. What if you could give the broadest command, the most broad command, all encompassing commandment that we are commanded to do in the Torah, in the Bible? If you could summarize it in one command, what would it be?
What it would be,
There's not necessarily a right or wrong question. I just want to see what comes to
because
your mind.
yeah, because you are trying to compromise everything in one. So I would say, um, I am your God. There is no other God under the sun.
Okay. Okay. And basically everything falls underneath that.
Yes.
I'd more or less agree with that. You could phrase it in a few different ways. Keep the will of the one God, do his commandments, the commandments of the one God, and don't do, idolatry. So it's basically the same idea. Okay. If we then look at what the Bible or the Torah, whether you're limiting it to the Torah, the five books of Moses, or whether you're limiting it to the entire Torah, to the entire Bible. If we look at the commands in the Bible, there's not a single place where it commands you to take every single word and interpret it in a specific way. All right, when it comes to non-commandments, there's no command that says take the non-commandment parts of the Bible and you have to understand it only in this way. And if you don't understand it in way X or way Z or way Y, however, because many things can be interpreted in more than one way and are, right? There is no commandment anywhere in the Torah, anywhere in the Bible, where it says there is only one acceptable way to understand any particular, let's say, non-legal part of the Bible. It doesn't exist. What do we have, though, instead? We do have a commandment that says, don't add to my commandments and don't take away from my commandments. Adding to God's commandments is just as severe a violation of God's will and word as taking away from it. In the religious world, it's very easy to point fingers and say, oh, this particular group, they've abandoned the commandments of God, but we're strongly keeping them because we're holy. You know, we close the top button of our shirts, even though there is no explicit command stating that, right?
Yeah.
They forget that adding to God's commandments is just as bad as taking away from them. Okay? And when that, we are in fact taking away from his commandments, because the command to not add is one of the commandments. So, what I'm getting at with regard to your question, right, and I think it's very important to touch on this before getting to it, is that God, number one, did not give us an explicit explanation of these stories. It's not there. Two, already in ancient Jewish literature, you see indications of more than one way of understanding these stories. Three, in the Torah itself, it says that when you have matters of controversy in your gates, ben din ledin, ben dam ladam, whether it's matters of adjudication, of matters of blood, matters of controversy in your gates, what should you do? You should go up to the place that the Lord your God chooses. Okay? And there you shall go to the priest, the Levite, to the judge, in the place that the Lord your God chose. And you shall do according to all that they instruct you to do. All right? There's not a single place in all of historical records of Jewish understanding of the Torah where even that Jewish legal system, what we call the Beth Din Gadol, the Great Sanhedrin, there's not a single place where they said you are obligated to understand the story of Adam and Eve, the creation story, in this specific way, X, Y, Z, whether that you have to understand it literally or that you have to understand it metaphorically. They didn't say either of those. All right, nowhere in Jewish literature. And in fact, to add to this, the early approach of the greatest of Jewish leaders, Talmudic scholars, after the Talmud had been compiled, and for our listeners who might not know what the Talmud is the only it's the only widely encompassing Jewish literature from ancient times that touches on the wide spectrum of topics in Torah and in Judaism, in keeping God's commandments. Right? It's the only extensive record we have of ancient Jewish understanding of the Bible and the commandments of God. All right? Nowhere in there did they say you have to understand this story in this particular way or this particular way, literally or metaphorically. And if you don't understand it in way X, Y, or Z, then you are a sinner, or then you should be excommunicated. Nowhere. There's no such command. You can say that because there are halachot, there are laws regarding writing a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll, that someone who says this story, whether it's figurative, metaphorical, or literal, someone who says a story should not be in the Torah, that's a whole different topic. But how you understand is different. Okay, so when it comes to whether it's the story of Adam and Eve or any story later on in the Bible that's not a clear command, it's like a narrative or some kind of a story, the greatest scholars of the Jewish people have stated that when it comes to these things, you're under no legal obligation in the Torah of God to understand it according to any one particular interpretation. So long as whatever interpretation you have, so long as that interpretation does not lead you to abandon the Torah, does not cause you to violate God's commandments, you're you're essentially not guilty of violating any of God's commandments, right? Um, and this is whether or not your understanding of that passage is objectively right or wrong. It could be that you have the wrong understanding of the story, perhaps. But as long as your wrong understanding of the story does not make you violate God's commandments, then you're not sinning. It is possible to unintentionally have an incorrect opinion without it being a sin. You know, people have different opinions about matters of politics or matters of science all the time, matters of medicine, matters about, disagreements about what happened in our childhood, and you and your sisters and brothers disagree on that. The fact that you disagree on what happened in your childhood, it doesn't mean that you're sinning for, just for having the wrong opinion, even if it's actually the wrong opinion. You know, the Torah doesn't require us, God does not require us to have an absolutely perfect knowledge of everything. So when you ask this question, the average rabbi, sadly in our days, it's not everyone, but the average rabbi would probably either give you several different opinions, but if it's in the Haredi world, they would probably go with a more literal understanding, while at the same time saying that there may be some figurative or metaphorical meanings in addition to the literal meaning. And then there are other rabbis, like I said, give you several different opinions, and they would try to skirt the issue. Like they wouldn't really want to give you what their actual opinion is because they're probably afraid of what the reaction would be. So I'm going to tell you that there's indication of both opinions in ancient Jewish literature, both both opinions that at least look like they may have taken it literally, at least some elements of the story literally, and there are opinions that definitely would give basis to early Jewish understanding of Adam and Eve's story as being metaphorical. You have a foundation to stand on for both approaches in historical Jewish literature. And again, that doesn't mean that either one is 100% right or wrong. It could be that one is right and one is wrong, right? So if you're asking me we basically need to rephrase the question. We need to ask either we could ask what is the mainstream Jewish opinion about this story, or we could ask what do the majority of Jews think? What do the majority of specifically traditional Jews think? What do the majority of ultra Orthodox Jews think? And you could ask, what do I personally think? Or what did Rabbi XYZ think about this, right? So, which would you like to know?
Well, you
Because my
can.
opinion is not necessarily what most people would say.
Yeah, I mean, I have. While you're talking, there are a lot of questions, just kind of coming to me. But I'm not going to answer right now. But I would like you tell me. I understand what you told right now, or
Okay.
do you think that is it good to tell what the Orthodox rabbis thinks, what the contemporary rabbi thinks, or other just a gist of it, like it's a little bit of a little touch. You don't have to
Okay.
go in depth.
Okay. Pretty much all educated Jews, not just people who know a little bit of Hebrew but haven't extensively become extensively familiar with classical Jewish literature, but pretty much any rabbi who is well acquainted with traditional Jewish literature will acknowledge that there is most definitely deep meaning in the story beyond a literalist reading. Pretty much all scholars in Judaism of any section of the Jewish world would agree with that. Usually, it's going to be more in the ultra Orthodox world, what they call black hat or Haredi, that are more likely and generally going to take it literally as well as figuratively. But they don't only take it literally. They think in addition to it being literal, there is very, very deep meaning in this story, far beyond just the literal story, that teach extremely deep and significant principles, both for this world and our everyday life, as well as metaphysical concepts. So they treat it with far more holiness even than the average Christian does. I, I, I would say that the average Christian either kind of, if we're talking about evangelical Christians, uh, I'm not saying that they would deny that it has deeper meaning, but the tendency is to pretty much take it at a very literal level. And then less evangelical type Christians, I'm not speaking about Catholics or Greek Orthodox, those types, but what they call mainline Protestants, they're more likely to just kind of dismiss it as an early Jewish or Israelite myth that somehow made it into the text, right? So the Jewish approach is different from both. We give very deep meaning to this story, and I I think that is the most important part of it, whether or not it's literal, to look at the meaning. And when you read this story in Hebrew, it's undeniable how extremely deep this story is. I really feel sorry for anyone who either totally discounts this story because they find it so uh, mythological, like talking serpents and stuff. They just throw it out the window. I feel sorry for that type of people, and I also feel sorry for people who take it literally and don't. In addition to taking it literally, right? The problem is not that they take it literally, but I also feel sorry for the people who take it literally and just kind of leave it at that, and they don't see the extreme depth in it. But I don't blame them because these people usually don't value the original language. You read it in Hebrew, your eyes will be like wide open at the symbolism here and scratching your head saying, this is not a coincidence. Whoever wrote this knew that there's a seeming contradiction between chapter 1 and chapter 2. That's what a lot of secularists like to point out and laugh at. Secularists who have never read the story in the original language, mind you, yet they are authorities. Some of them even have PhDs and they can't read the first chapter, you know. Um, I'll just give you a few examples. One of the most widely known details of the story is that Adam and Eve were naked, and that there was a talking serpent who was clever or cunning. What you miss is that the verse where it says that the serpent was cunning and the verse that says that Adam and Eve were naked are literally side by side, immediately, one after another. One after another. You read that, you don't see any particular connection between these two verses. But you read it in Hebrew, the verse where it says the serpent was cunning, the word for cunning there is arum. Go to the next verse. Adam and Eve were naked. The word for naked there is arum. Same exact word, same exact spelling. Whoever wrote those two verses right next to each other knew that he was making a connection between the cunningness, the cleverness of the serpent, and the nakedness of Adam and Eve. There's no way he didn't see that connection and intentionally put it there, right? You read it in English or any other non-Hebrew language, you're going to completely miss this. That's just one of many things that'll make you scratch your head. Horeb, when they're kicked out of the garden, what is the last thing it says about the garden? This podcast is called Kol Horeb, right? Kol Horeb,
Yes.
right? Okay, so there's a verse where it says the voice of the Lord was going about the garden. The word for voice there is kol. It's the same as sound.
Sound, yeah.
Sound is the same word in Hebrew, unlike English. Then you have the story ends, right? The story ends with what did God put at the entrance to Eden after man left?
Or he put the gods or something. He put the
Yeah.
yeah,
He
right.
put cherubim,
Mm-hmm.
cherubs, and we have to try not to think about little baby
Did
cherubs
yeah.
that you see in European art. We don't know
Mm-hmm.
exactly what those are, but that's a whole different topic. It's very interesting, but a whole different topic. But it says that God placed cherubs at the entrance to the garden, and a fiery revolving sword. Why? To guard the way to the tree of life. Okay. What is called the tree of life later on in the Bible? The Torah. The word
The
of the Lord
word,
is the
yeah,
tree of
yeah, the word of the, yeah.
right. And okay, so the tree of life is the Torah, God's guidance, life-giving guidance. How do you say sword in Hebrew? In Hebrew,
Sword.
sword, a knife, strong
I know.
knife.
Tell me, go ahead.
Horeb, Horeb.
Okay.
It's the same exact word, the same exact spelling as Horeb.
Oh, okay.
It's the gate
Call
to the
Horeb.
tree of.
Call Horeb. Okay. Got that point. Yes.
It's the gate to the tree of life, right? And also, it says it was revolving. The word revolving is mitapech. Okay, mitapech. This means turning like this. It's also reasonably so. It's the modern Hebrew word for revolution, something that makes an upheaval. It changes things, makes things back different from how they were before. If something was like this, you revolve it, and now it's like this, turned it on its face. And that's what the Torah does. It takes a death obsessed culture, which was spreading destruction among humanity, and it flips it on its face. The Torah is known for being basically silent about an afterlife, whereas all the cultures around the ancient Israelites were obsessed with afterlife. They were obsessed with it to the point that they neglected basic dignity and compassion for people around them in this life. So the Torah is basically void about uh, details about the afterlife. This is about as deep as we get, but it also sets the foundation. Okay, long story short, my personal opinion about Adam and Eve, this is just my personal opinion, is that it's both metaphorical and literal, but that the idea that it's literal does not mean that the Adam and Eve in the genealogical record of, like Noah and so forth, does not mean that that Adam and Eve is literally the first biologically, anatomically human individual. So my personal belief is that the story is mostly metaphorical, but that's not empty. It's very real. Very often, principles are more real than even like our own physical bodies. Our bodies die and change. Certain principles, one plus one has been true. That principle has been true before humans even existed, before we were even aware to think about it. We kind of discovered it, but it was always true. That's a principle. The story of Adam and Eve, in my opinion, is overwhelmingly metaphorical for eternal truths and setting the foundation for the rest of the Torah. Certain concepts that people think aren't really touched on in the Torah, but I would say they are touched on at the very beginning. And people just miss it because they they miss it because they don't see the depth of the story. They're just looking at the face value literal teaching. So again, I do think it's literal, but I don't think that I think that the individual Adam and Eve uh, represent probably historical people, but I personally do not think that they are the first anatomical humans, physically humans. But then you can ask the question: is a human really a human if they are void of moral principles? If we're so degenerate that there's not much that distinguishes us between ourselves and the animals. If we don't have self control and morals, we're basically just highly developed animals, a lot more capability. You look at what the Nazis did to Jews and even non Jews during the Holocaust. It didn't matter how much intelligence they had. There are non human animals that have far more intelligence than humans do in certain areas of intelligence. Intelligence is not black or white. There are different types of intelligence. There's memory intelligence. There's spatial intelligence. There's artistic intelligence. Chimpanzees have incredibly more advanced short-term memory than humans do. there's tests you can study on, you can look up on YouTube, see it with your own eyes. They can memorize, like in an instant, a whole pattern that humans can't do. We are not special because of our intelligence per se, right? If chimpanzees had I forget the term. There's a word for. I don't want to waste time trying to think about the term,
Yeah,
but
let's swing back. Yeah, go ahead.
humans, basically, humans are unique from other apes in that we have a thumb that can do this, right? Most of them can't. Their thumbs are too far down. It's possible that if they had hands similar to us, they could do a lot more than what they currently do. If they could speak, they can maybe do a lot more than they currently can do because they could communicate with each other better, but they're limited. What what distinguishes us from animals is not our intelligence. It's our self-control and our ability to reason and to be intellectually honest, to set a goal. And if we the moment that we abandon that or haven't developed that, we're no different from animals. So I'm getting at the point that in a way, even if humans existed before Adam and Eve, in my personal understanding, even if humans existed before Adam and Eve anatomically with physical bodies, I think that Adam and Eve represent the point at which humanity was born as humans, where we stepped beyond just being an advanced animal, you know, and we awoke to the image of God. The image of God was breathed into us, so to speak, right? And that was the point at which we became morally aware. We embraced timeless principles at that point. And I'd say that was the beginning of the civilization of humanity, not just with intelligence, but with morals and principles that will bring improvement to the chaos in this world. Maybe there were individuals before then that had done this, but they died off. They didn't succeed to spread it. So it could be that Adam and Eve were simply the first that helped get the ball rolling to spread morality and elevate humanity to the image of God. Go ahead. I know you have all kinds of questions.
No, no. If you're going to open that topic of maybe somebody before, then it's going to be like a totally different thing. People will be getting confused. Like we only be reading this Adam and Eve for this long now. Now this is a new statement coming there. Maybe sometimes you never know somebody was there.
All
So
speculative. We
yeah,
should not
so
waste time. We shouldn't waste time with speculation.
yeah,
And
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I understand that like now what I'm seeing from your answer is this: you were searching everything in the Torah, what Torah says. Does it talks about the event? Does it not talks about the event? And so
even,
everything,
I don't know what word
um,
you said. Does it talk
I mean,
about what?
event or the incident or the event, Adam
Okay.
and Eve. So you were trying to get the, check it with the Torah, what Torah talks about that. So you, for anything, for everything, going back to Torah. That's all basically, right? So question is this: do you think that Torah can cover every problems, everything, any doubts or everything could be easily cleared by Torah? Is it like that's the only answer?
I say the Torah